Or if you don't know, my name is Maria Elena D'Amico. I am the president of the Women's Council in Tampa. Hello, everybody. And we have this wonderful mastermind group that we've started here. How many people are new to this? Is this the first time that you're here? Anybody? Hi, Tanya. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. Welcome to the group. The goal of this, and how many people here are property managers versus just a realtor, maybe thinking about it? Welcome. Okay. You could be a property manager, you could be thinking about property management, you can just be a realtor wanting to know more about it. It's not limited to anything. It's just we're all here to help each other out, to be here for each other. If anybody has questions, we're all across the state. So we're pulling things, sharing horror stories and funny stories and trying to teach as much as we can about what's going on. So today, as a guest, I have brought in Victoria from a company called Our Pet Policy. And what they do is they do screening for emotional support animals and pets and service animals and things like that. And if you're not never sure as to if it's a true ESA letter, if they're trying to scam you when they say, "Oh, I have 3 ESAs," really? Really? Does one wake you up and one put you to sleep and one lick your toes? What? Come on. You got 3 different issues, you need 3 different animals. Let's be real here. Not that it can't happen, but it can. But I know petscreening.com has been a little lax in their policies lately. So I wanted to bring as an option. We have just switched my company over to her. And I thought it would be great for her to come in and talk to you guys a little bit about the policies, the practices, what they do, what is an ESA versus a service animal, what makes it, where are they allowed, where they not allowed, what you can and can't do when it comes to property rentals and things like that. So I am going to turn it over to her. Victoria, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria. Really excited to be here to be able to share with all of you. I have a presentation. I'm just going to go ahead and get that pulled up. And if you all can just confirm, maybe by raising a hand or confirming yes, that you can see my screen. Okay, fantastic. Well, I have a presentation prepared. As Maria mentioned, I'll be talking a bit about ESAs, service animals, and then I'll also be wrapping up by sharing a bit about what our pet policy does to help property managers when navigating this topic. I imagine a lot of you may be coming with lots of questions, concerns, and so I'm happy to have some Q&A at the end. I think just in the interest of getting through the presentation, if you want to just make note of those questions and start to compile those in the chat, we can go through those one by one at the end. So let's go ahead and dive in. So we're going to be talking about reasonable accommodation requests for assistance animals. So what is an assistance animal? This is an umbrella term that captures...
Turn this down right now, sorry.
Okay, can you hear on your end?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Okay, awesome. And so this is an umbrella term. So when we're talking about assistance animals, we're talking about service animals and ESAs, emotional support animals. And it's really important to understand that assistance animals are not pets. They're different. They're required for a disability. And I'm going to go ahead and share this presentation with everyone following the call. I'll probably send it to Maria directly, and she's welcome to distribute it to any attendees. You're going to notice there are a lot of screenshots with text in this presentation, and those screenshots are coming directly from HUD's most recent guidance about this topic. So you can see not only our paraphrasing in little bite-sized digestible pieces of information, but you'll see the actual citation where this information is coming from HUD in their FHEO 2020 guidance that came out in 2020. So emotional support animals, let's dive into those first. These animals provide therapeutic emotional support to help individuals with non-observable disabilities. So just by looking at the individual, you would not be able to tell that they have a disability. You would not be able to tell that they require an animal for that disability. By contrast, we have service animals that are a little bit different than ESAs. only dogs can be service animals. And this is because service animals are trained to do work or perform tasks for an individual with a disability. There are a few rare instances where a miniature horse has been a service animal. I have to say, I have yet to ever see that in my experience working with ESAs and service animals in the property management space. That's just the one caveat that I will put in there. But you can't have a service animal cat. I'm not sure if anyone has a cat, but if you have a cat or if you've interacted with a cat, you probably know it's very difficult to train them to do something the way that you could train a dog to do a task. Service animals do not need to have professional training. It is acceptable for the owner to train the dog themselves, but they do have to be trained to do work or tasks that benefit someone with a disability. So myself personally, I have a dog, a cute little border collie. She is well trained. She can sit, she can stay, she can come when I call. And those are all, really incredible tasks that, most dogs that are well behaved, well trained can do. But those tasks have nothing to do with a disability. So the task does need to relate to the disability. And so when we're thinking about ESAs and thinking about service animals in the property management space, we're really talking about a reasonable accommodation request. And so, what is a reasonable accommodation request? This is when someone is requesting a change, an exception, or an adjustment to the rule. So they're asking for some sort of adjustment to be made because they have a disability. And this adjustment needs to be made so they can have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy their dwelling the way that any other, able-bodied person would be able to do. And so this exception would pertain to pet fees and pet restrictions at your property. So maybe you have a no pets property, or maybe your property only allows dogs and no cats. Someone who has an ESA or service animal is requesting a change to your rules to where they can be accommodated to have their animal live with them as an ESA or service animal so that they can properly enjoy that dwelling. And that is something that only an individual with a disability would have access to. This is not for someone who doesn't have a disability. And so the most recent guidance that we have on this topic comes from HUD, Housing and Urban Development. They put out guidance titled FHEO 2020-01. And the reason that they put out this new guidance is to help housing providers distinguish between a person with a non-obvious disability with a legitimate need for an assistance animal and someone who really doesn't have a disability and simply wants to have their pet, avoid the costs and the limitations associated by housing providers' pet policies. Maybe they want to get out of pet fees and pet deposits. And so we want to make that distinction. And HUD acknowledges that this is an issue. It can be quite difficult to understand who truly does have a need and who is just trying to get out of those rules and restrictions and fees. And so this guidance was put out to help housing providers understand how to make that distinction and to help those with disabilities understand how to properly request this accommodation that they need and that they deserve. All right. Now, this is probably something that you've heard about. There is a huge issue with websites that are selling online purchase letters. And I just want to pause. Is my screen still sharing, or have you? Okay, I thought so. Let me go ahead and reshare it. I might have clicked the wrong button. My apologies. All right, can everyone see again? Okay, perfect. So sorry about that. So what does HUD say about online purchase letters? Since I know this is a really popular topic, there are over 80 websites selling letters to anyone who completes a short interview, questionnaire, and pays a fee. And so HUD acknowledges that this is an issue. There are websites selling this type of documentation. These websites gained popularity around 2012 for folks seeking accommodations on both flights and rentals. By 2020, the surge became so large that the airline industry actually did away with their accommodation policies, even impacting people who really truly have a need for their ESA on flights. Now, only service animals are allowed on flights, and any other animal would just need to be considered as a regular pet. And so seeing that writing on the wall and not wanting this to negatively impact the housing industry, HUD issued some guidelines to provide some regulations to help create some parameters on what is considered reliable documentation for housing accommodations, because there are folks who really truly need their emotional support animals for all the fraud that is out there. There are people with legitimate needs, and so HUD wanted to ensure that those rights could be safeguarded. And so this is coming directly from HUD's most recent guidance. They acknowledge this issue, that there are these websites selling this type of documentation. The process is very short. It usually involves just one short interview, maybe a brief questionnaire, and the paying of a fee. In HUD's experience, you'll see this in the blue highlighted section. In HUD's experience, this type of documentation by itself is not sufficient to establish that someone has a disability-related need for an assistance animal. That process is just too brief. The health professional has not used their relationship with the patient and their professional understanding of their needs to really make this diagnosis of a disability and determine that an ESA is the best method of treatment. So this is the guidance that we use when we are reviewing letters and identifying letters that can be purchased online. Now, before we get into that part of it even further, I do just want to go over the Fair Housing Act, HUD, and the ADA, how they interact with one another and how they're different. You've probably noticed I've been talking a lot about HUD. And so I think there can be confusion about this. We certainly hear a lot of confusion from residents who are really usually only thinking about the ADA. They're not thinking about HUD or the FHA. So I just want to go over this, make sure everyone's on the same page. So the FHA, the Fair Housing Act, protects people from discrimination when they are renting, buying a home. Maybe they're looking to get a mortgage, anything related to housing. The FHA exists to protect individuals from discrimination. In the Fair Housing Act, the authority to administer this act is given to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. So this is the federal agency responsible for enforcing compliance of fair housing laws. If someone has an issue, they feel that they're being discriminated against, they're reporting that directly to HUD. So HUD is really, really important when we're talking about this topic. Then we also have the ADA, another really important civil rights law, Americans with Disability Act. This prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in many areas of public life, ensuring they have the same rights and opportunities as those without disabilities. So while the ADA is incredibly important, it does not pertain specifically to housing. And so the rules are different when talking about service animals and ESAs. ESAs actually do not have any rights under the ADA. They only exist for the purposes of fair housing. The rules for service animals and verification of service animals differs between the ADA and HUD. And so this is where it can get so confusing, and it's really important to have really solid understanding when handling these accommodation requests. So, maybe you're wondering, how can I assess a reasonable accommodation request for an assistance animal? What do I do? What kind of questions can I ask? What can't I ask? There's so much that goes into this. So first and foremost, I would urge you to review HUD's 2020 guidance, FHEO 2020-01. This is the most recent information that we have available. It's a 19-page document. It's definitely pretty dense. There's a lot of information in it, but if you haven't reviewed it, I would highly recommend that you begin to review it. If you have any renters who have ESAs or service animals required for non-observable disabilities, meaning if you look at the person, you cannot tell that they have a disability, you can't tell that they need an animal, you are welcome to request documentation from a health professional confirming a disability-related need for the animal. This is not a certificate. This is not an ID card. This is not a registration number. All of those things can be purchased on the internet by anyone, regardless of whether or not they have a disability. There is no state or federal registration or identification for ESAs and service animals. Now, there are individuals who will take their animals to training schools, and maybe they get a certificate after completing the training school. For me personally, I took my dog to PetSmart when she was a puppy, completed 6 puppy classes, teaching her how to sit, how to stay, how to walk on a leash. We got a certificate afterwards. That does not mean she's a service animal. So those are some really important distinctions to make. So reliable documentation is a letter, usually from a health professional. So it doesn't have to be a letter. It could be a phone call, some sort of verification from a health professional that this individual has a disability related need for the animal. When we are dealing with this type of documentation, we never want to ask what the disability is. We don't want to know what kind of medication the person's taking, what their diagnosis is, what their treatment plan involves. We don't want to know any of those details. Sometimes those details are divulged, unprompted. The resident may disclose that information. Please always let them know, hey, we're not looking for any details about the disability. We have to confirm a disability related need is present because that is the criteria for getting an accommodation, but we don't want to know what that disability is. Now, let's say you're reviewing a letter. The letter looks like it's good. It's confirming a disability related need for the animal. You're going to want to verify that the health professional whose name appears on the letter actually wrote that letter. You want to verify the truth and accuracy, that this is a current letter based on a disability related need written by that health professional. It should be considered reliable. Unfortunately, we see letters that are forged. We see letters that have been altered. Maybe it's a letter that was written for the renter's friend, and they've taken the letter and they've copied and pasted their own name on top of it. I've seen letters even that appear to be from the VA on really legitimate letterhead, only to find out upon calling the health professional that the letter was entirely forged. That's not a patient of the provider. So unfortunately, there is a lot of fraud out there. And so that's why it is important to verify that this health professional really truly did write the letter. And, if you're not interested in doing all of that, you could opt for a third party, such as our pet policy, to handle all of this for you as your chosen agent. You'll notice there are some footnotes here. All of these bullet points are backed up by the HUD guidance. And on page 9 of the HUD guidance, they indicate that the housing provider or their agent can make this determination. So HUD permits you to use a third party, whether that's you, your lawyer, or us. We can handle this on your behalf. So let's get into our pet policy and how we help. We provide a complete animal database where all of the animals across your properties are compiled into one central point, really easy to look for, easy to identify. We reduce unreliable ESAs and service animals across your properties by using our thorough FHA and HUD compliant process to verify the information provided. We're also really passionate about protecting the rights of those with disabilities, making sure they are able to get the accommodation they require, while also ensuring the rights of the housing provider are protected and making sure that you are not just accepting any and every letter that you receive, regardless of its reliability. And then we do offer liability reduction and protection. We take on the full responsibility and full liability for our own communication. And so if we are handling your ESAs and service animals for you, we can protect you from HUD complaints. If someone is unhappy with the outcome and they decide they want to get a lawyer, they want to call HUD, if that were to go to an investigation, we would be the ones responding to that, ensuring that you are protected. And then we also really pride ourselves on exceptional customer service. We have a whole team dedicated to helping residents with their requests and helping property managers as well, responding via email, phone, and text. We're located here in Boise, Idaho, and our phone calling team and email team is just out there in our main office building, and they're amazing. They're so kind and really good at explaining the rules and explaining the guidance. They're all fully trained on these HUD guidelines. I want to talk a little bit more about our liability reduction. So as I've kind of hinted at, we assume all of the liability for our communication with the applicants and residents. So we will be in charge of letting them know if and why their accommodation request is not considered reliable according to HUD. And if that is the case, we will also give the resident the notice that their animal would need to be considered a regular pet if we cannot move forward with the approval. These are challenging conversations to navigate, and a lot of times, residents don't always have a good understanding of the rules. And so we are providing a lot of education along the way. And then, as mentioned, our lawyers will handle any responses to complaints. We, of course, share responses with your team before submitting, since this is something that is relating to your property, but we would be taking on the full liability. Now, I am curious if anyone has seen advertisements that look like this one on the right-hand side of the screen. We've kind of talked a little bit about online ESA letters. There are so many advertisements out there. I know I'm seeing them all over social media, all over YouTube. Even if you just do a quick Google search trying to learn information, reliable information about ESAs and service animals, it's hard to not be bombarded by all of the websites that are selling this type of documentation. The reason that this is not a reliable process is because it's so quick, it's so short, it's not thorough. That one simple interview is not enough, according to HUD, to determine that someone has a disability related need for an animal. So, these are the types of advertisements that your renters are seeing. It's really, really pervasive. And I am curious, has anyone seen letters that look like this one? If you have been the one to review the letters at your properties, curious if any of these letters look familiar to anyone? No. Okay, not quite. Okay, yeah, and that's totally okay. These are just a couple of examples of letters that we see all the time. We like to sometimes see if these look familiar to you. These are commonly purchased letters. Maybe if you go back to some of your files, you kind of thumb through and see if either of these look familiar. These are just two examples. There are, of course, over 80 websites selling this type of documentation. And the way this works is that maybe the health professional's name will change across these letters, but the content and the letterhead, the format is usually identical whenever the letter is coming from a given website. Now, getting into our reliability findings, we are finding on average that about 35 to 40% of reasonable accommodation requests for ESAs and service animals are reliable. So less than half of these requests are reliable. 60 to 65% of these requests are unreliable. So, if you have processed requests in the past and you're thinking about how many you have approved versus how many that you haven't approved, kind of be thinking about, what your ratio is, because we're finding that a significant number of these requests are unreliable, unfortunately. And now I want to get into the differences in the between the plans that we offer. We do have two different plans. If you are interested in considering our services to handle this for you, both plans are going to include a complete animal database. So all of your animal information will be made available for you in one single place. We do offer an animal audit where we can reach out to all of your residents to get an updated animal status and see if there are any animals that maybe were never disclosed to you. That's going to be something specific to the Pro plan, as is our data reporting and revenue tracking. If you feel that maybe you haven't been consistent with applying pet rent and that's something that you're interested in getting on track with, we can help with that on Pro plan. And we can also help with animal related complaints on Pro plan. So if you have issues with waste not being picked up, maybe a dog barking all night long, any issues along those lines, we can help with the communication to manage that issue and providing education to your residents. On both plans, you get liability coverage. That's always something that we offer. We, of course, are reviewing and verifying those ESA letters. If they are unreliable, we're able to detect that across both plans. Both plans are going to include customer service support to the property management via phone and email. Phone and email support to the resident is only going to be available on Pro plan. So we do not offer phone support to residents on the standard plan. That's just something that is more laborious for our team. And so that's going to be more of a perk. Email and text message support is available regardless of the plan. So that's always available. We do have two pricing options for both plans. And again, you will receive a copy of this a little bit later, so no need to remember all of this information, but I do just kind of want to touch on it. So if you are interested in the standard plan, we have an option that can operate at zero cost to you. So the cost is held by residents with regular pets. So that being said, your properties must be pet friendly to be eligible for this plan. So the cost would be $35 a year for the first pet, 20 for any additional pets paid by the residents with pets. So if they have no pets at all, no animals, there's no cost. And there's also no cost to anyone with an ESA or service animal, since of course we cannot charge for that. Or if you do not want your residents to see any cost and you would prefer to take that cost on, this can operate at 75 cents per door per month. We do have a $20 monthly minimum. So if you do not have enough properties in your portfolio to exceed that minimum, that's perfectly fine. It would just be a flat rate of $20 a month until you exceed that minimum. And that's no cost to the residents on that option. Now, if you're interested in Pro Plan, meaning you want that phone support for your residents, you want assistance with complaints, you would like maybe some assistance with identifying animals on your properties, or assistance with getting on track with pet rent and making sure that is being collected. These are the pricing options that you have available. So we can do the splitting of the cost between your residents and your property management. So $35 for the first pet, 20 for any additional pets paid by pet owning residents only. So no cost for ESAs or service animals, no costs for units containing no animals. And then to help cover that cost, the property management would pay 75 cents per door per month. The other option would be to have zero cost for your residents, and that would be $2 per door per month paid by the property management with a $20 monthly minimum. So 4 pricing options total for 2 plans. You're going to have 2 pricing options per plan. So there's something for everyone. And at a minimum,
Not to interrupt, most everybody here is single family homes, not apartments or anything like that. So that per door may not work for them.
Okay, yeah, and we do have folks on single family and multifamily on all of our plans. So
Okay.
it really just comes down to personal preference and what you're looking to get out of it and how you want to use it. I've seen some folks will do the per door and they will per door cost, and they will find a way to recoup that cost somewhere else. Maybe they up the pet rent a couple dollars a month, and they're able to cover that cost completely. So it really just comes down to what you're looking for and what your goals are. If you don't have a problem pushing off that cost to the residents, this can operate at $0 to you. I know for some folks that they have concerns, maybe depending on, what their situation is, they don't want their residents to see that cost. So just depends on what you're looking for. We do have a really special offer for you. If you are interested in getting an opinion, getting a review on some ESA letters, we offer the 3 for free reliability report. And the way it works is you can submit up to 3 emotional support animal letters, and we will give you a tailored reliability report detailing the reliability of each letter that you submit. I will provide that link in the chat right now. That link is also available in this presentation, but I will provide both that link and my email. So that's gone in the chat right now. And if you're interested in more information, go ahead and send me an email. If you're interested in learning more about the plans we have available, or learning more about our process, how we might be able to work with you, if you want to talk to me about the policy that you have in place to see which plan it could potentially be compatible with, or if you just want to talk about ESAs and service animals and ask some questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But now I'd love to move to some Q&A if people do have questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for now, and yeah, we can kind of open up the floor to some questions. I'm going to start by reviewing the chat. I do believe there might be a question already. So Kathleen has asked, how do you tell someone that their letter is not accepted? So this is a great question, and this is. Oh, Maria, did you have a question?
No. I'm going to say no. I didn't know. Fake letter, go away. Sorry.
And so our team is really professional about this. They will, it's not going to be an immediate denial. So let's say, I want to kind of set the scene. Let's say someone provides a letter that we identified as being purchased online. It matches the format exactly. Maybe we've even received a letter from that exact same provider who's written that exact same letter for other people and those people have confirmed that letter's been purchased online after a short interview. First, we're going to start by letting the person know that we've received their documentation and how we've identified it. Hey, it looks like it's unreliable, looks like it matches identically to letters that can be purchased online. We'll share with them the guidance from HUD to help them understand why it's not reliable. And then we'll say, hey, do you have other documentation to provide that could be considered reliable? Because if so, we'd be happy to move forward with that. And so we are giving them an option to proceed. And if we also give them the opportunity to provide some clarification if they believe that we came to our conclusion in error. We want this to be a dialogue where there is that opportunity to have a conversation about it. But let's say this person does not have other documentation and they don't have any clarification to provide. They accept that their documentation is unreliable. They, maybe they've even confirmed that it was purchased online after a short interview, since we are asking that as part of the process. If that is the case, we are going to let them know that unfortunately we cannot move forward with granting that accommodation, and the animal will need to be considered a regular pet. And at that point, if the property allows pets and if this pet would fit within that property's restrictions, there's no reason to not allow it as a pet and just begin to collect that pet rent and the pet fee, pet deposit if applicable. If, however, it's a no pets property, or maybe this property has restrictions and the pet wouldn't fit in those restrictions, unfortunately, the animal would need to be kept off of the premises until, if they're able to provide reliable documentation, they're always welcome to do so at a later date. But let's say it's someone who's just applying and they're looking to move in for the first time, they're likely going to need to find, a different accommodation, since they're probably not going to move in without their animal if their animal would not be allowed. It looks like there's another question. What if the owner has a white carpet and does not want any animals, service included? What do you do if you are the property manager? He said that $250 will not be enough if the pet owner is not clean. And so with this in mind, you would not be able to collect any sort of deposit or fee for a service animal or ESA if we can verify that the documentation is reliable. And you would not be able to restrict a service animal or an ESA from the unit if we can verify that documentation. That being said, any damages that the animal does cause, the resident would be subject to covering the cost associated with those damages. Additionally, there are some limitations to what a service animal is allowed to do. So, service animal is not allowed to be aggressive or posing a threat to others, and it's not allowed to just be causing all sorts of damage. So there would be some responsibility there for the resident, but if it wouldn't be an unreasonable burden financially for that housing provider to have the animal in the unit, then you would not be able to restrict it. What other questions do you all have?
I have one for you.
Yeah.
If somebody has accepted generic letters over time without checking into them, let's say, or they just did like their own screening and whatever,
Mhm.
and now they have decided to come on with our pet policy, and not for me, but would they be able to go back and rescreen these accepted ESAs, or do they have to wait until it's up for renewal for their yearly thing? Can they say, hey, you know what, we've gone with this company now, and we are rescreening all of our ESAs to make sure everything is above board?
That's a great question. And so there's a few nuances here. Of course, there's always so many nuances with this topic. So in the FHEO 2020-01 guidance, HUD states that accommodations that were approved prior to 2020 cannot be reconsidered. So I don't know if that's the case for everyone. I know some people have long-term tenants. I mean, that would be going on 5 years of tenancy at least at that
Let's just
point.
say like the last 2 years,
Okay.
you've just accepted a letter, they give you a letter, you don't pay attention, you say, oh,
Mhm.
it's an ESA letter, you take it, and now you're questioning the authenticity of it. Can you,
Yeah.
in the last 2 to 3 years, force them to go back and go through screening?
Yeah, so if, assuming it's someone who's moved in, post 2020, and you have already approved that accommodation, what you can do, and this is what our customers do, not all of them, some people have, personal opinions, and I can get into that next, but when they get started with our services, upon getting started, they will add verbiage to their leases and their renewals that our pet policy is now the animal management software. All information is to be up to date. And I provide all of this, this verbiage. I actually handle, I don't know if I ever said at my title at the beginning, but I handle all of our onboarding of new customers. And so I provide everyone with this verbiage to add to their leases. And so that way, when someone is up for renewal, when the property management sends that renewal out, that verbiage is going to be included about our pet policy being the form of verification. And so at renewal, that's when we can re-verify that documentation that was previously approved. And so I always urge property managers to wait to sign the renewal until that process is complete, because that's going to make the determination on what the lease will say. But that's when we can do it. Now we have some folks who say, I don't want to touch any of my renewals. I want to let them be. I'm only going to implement our pet policy on my brand new applicants. And that's fine, as long as you treat everyone the same across the board. So you can't pick and choose, oh, I'm just going to have this one renewal do it because I don't think their letter's legitimate, but I'm not going to make this other person go through that process. That would not be fair. That could raise some red flags to HUD. So just want to pick something and try and stick to it as much as possible. Of course, if you identify something that you were maybe not doing totally correctly and you want to fix it, that's totally different. But yeah, you want to come up with a standardized process for sure.
I have a question. This is Kathleen. Sorry, my camera's not working, but I had tried to put a tenant into a co-op situation, co-op apartments. They didn't accept pets at all, but this woman it was definitely a service animal, and they absolutely refused to take her animal, even though it was a legit service animal. I had to tell her she couldn't go in there. Am I liable in any way if the landlord says, no, can't do it?
So, I mean, HUD does say that these requests do need to be considered. Of course, if she was not able to provide reliable documentation, I will say one thing, if it was a service animal required for an observable disability, so it was really obvious what the animal was required for, such as a seeing eye dog or dog pulling a wheelchair, you would not be able to ask for documentation. You would have to just, confirm that it's required for a disability and ask what task it's been trained to perform. And at that point, you would have to accept it. Of course, excluding any instances where the animal's being aggressive or anything like that, because that would not be allowed. But you can require documentation if the need for the animal is not observable. So if you're not able to tell just by looking at the person that they need this animal, you can ask for documentation from a health professional. And if she was not allowed to even go through that process, that is definitely concerning for sure.
Yeah, it was very concerning in that it was the management company that refused her to go in. And I do a lot with the seeing eye personally. So, I'm very well versed in the service animal portion of it. And I went to my broker and said, I think we should take this further. And he said, well, you're welcome to. I'm not going to, because you can kiss goodbye working with this building ever again if you take them to, if you do that. So I let it drop. The girl didn't want to do anything. So I just, it really bothered me that they could do that.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that's concerning. And I see, Frida has asked, is the property manager liable if the owner says no? I can double check this with the team. I would imagine that the person liable would ultimately be the person who delivered that decision, similar to how when we're delivering that decision for our clients, we're the ones liable. So I would imagine that the property management would be liable, or excuse me, the owner would be liable, but also if the property manager is the one delivering the decision on behalf of the ownership, they're probably somehow wrapped up in it. So I definitely think that there could be some risk there. I can double check with our team and our lawyers and kind of get a little bit more information about that. But yeah, that's definitely a concerning one. I will say though, for a co-op, that brings up the topic of allergies, right? And so if it is communal living and someone's already placed there, and if they have an allergy accommodation in place, meaning they have requested a change to the rules, meaning I want to be able to live in an allergen-free environment. I have my allergy is disabling, meaning it would limit my major life activities if I were to be in the same space with an animal. You know, similar to the ESA or service animal, you know, you could get an accommodation in place where, you know, a doctor is signing off on that saying, hey, this person needs an accommodation for their allergy to live in an allergen-free environment. You know, not every single cat or dog allergy is at the level where it's limiting major life activities. Some people just sneeze a few times, whereas other people, you know, are going to go anaphylactic. And so it kind of depends on the situation there. And, you know, depending on the accommodations that you already have in place, you would want to do your best to place each person in a way that would accommodate their needs. What other questions does everyone have?
I would say, Victoria, a tip for everybody if you're not sure if it's a service animal or an ESA, because people love to call ESA, well, I have a service animal. I have a service animal. First thing you do is you look at them. If that animal is not with them 24/7, it's not a service animal. It's an ESA. They can call it a service animal all they want, but if they have a severe need for a service animal, that animal is by their side 24/7. Okay, that's your
Right,
first.
and that's why they have rights to public access. So, you know, a service animal would have to be required in the grocery store, you know, in regular shopping, going to the mall, that sort of thing. As long as it is, you know, required for disability and trained to do a task by law, they do have to have access, and the person can't be required to show documentation for it. Whereas it's a little different for housing, that, you know, that documentation can be required when it's a non-observable need.
I love people that try to throw that around. It's my service animal. No, it's your ESA. Why? Well, no, it's no. Is it? I don't see it here. Are you hiding it under your shirt? No. How long does it normally take once a request is submitted to get an answer back about a ESA letter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, there are a few factors that can impact the response time or the decision time, rather. So, our team does our best to at least review the documentation the same day or next business day if it's submitted after hours. And that's when that process starts, where we start to begin to communicate with the resident. You know, first and foremost, if it's unreliable, you know, that's going to follow one track of trying to see if they have other documentation to provide or clarification about their experience getting that letter. Whereas if the letter does appear to be reliable, we're moving on to contacting the health professional to verify directly with the source. Our ultimate goal is to get these turned around in 2 to 3 business days, but as I'm sure you all know, health professionals are super busy people. And so when we contact their office, we're usually sending information via fax, via email. We're also calling. So we're trying to reach out in multiple ways to get a response as quickly as possible. Sometimes these health professionals aren't able to respond the same or next day, and it takes, you know, a few times to try calling them to get in touch. And the responsiveness of the resident is going to impact this as well. So if they're not being responsive, that's going to play a role. Our goal is always 2 to 3 business days. Our timelines are all a little bit nuanced based on the situation. So someone who's a current resident who's renewing their lease, that timeline is going to be a little bit different than someone who is looking to move in and start their lease within the next week. Those timelines are going to be different. The new move-in is going to be a more crunched timeline, of course, compared to someone who is maybe 90 days out from their renewal date. There's going to be a little bit more time allowed there. So it does vary, but 2 to 3 days is our goal.
That's good to know. I don't want people thinking it's like, oh, send it in next day, you get an answer.
Right. You know, I have seen that happen. It's exceptionally rare, though. It has to be someone who is so on top of it where, you know, they're seeing their health professional regularly. They're telling their health professional, hey, I'm submitting my letter to this company. Please be on the lookout for contact from them. I have seen it happen. It is pretty rare.
Understand, there's no charge to anybody. If it's an ESA, there is no charge. It's only if you're registering them as a pet.
Correct.
Or it turns out to be a pet.
Yes.
There's a charge for this.
Yes, if it converts to a regular pet at that point, the resident would be subject to paying that $35 fee or $20 if it's a second pet, for example. Any other questions? It could be about anything we've talked about, anything about ESAs, service animals, our services.
Nothing? Well, Victoria, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. I hope this has cleared things up for people. ESAs are such a tough thing to try to figure out, and there's so many places out there that will just provide a fake letter for people. that this is absolutely huge. And knowing that they have a place to call or to go to sign up with, to do this with, is just wonderful. Takes the liability off of us and gives it to somebody who does this day in and day out and knows what they're doing. We've got enough problems to deal with. Frida.
Definitely.
Oh, no,
Absolutely.
but she did. Anybody else? Any last questions? Any last comments? Frida.
Yes, how far in advance
Yep.
do we need to submit it? Say, if I have a house up for rent and someone applies, how far in advance does it take for me to get an answer back if they give me documentation for it to be checked out?
That's what we were just talking. She said 2 to 3 business days normally.
Yes, that's our goal. And I can provide a little bit more information about that too. So the way that our process works is we give you a special link that is unique to your management. So Frida, your link would be different than Maria's link. And as soon as that person starts their rental application, you would need to give them that link so they can get started with our pet policy. And so they'll get that information submitted to us. And as Maria said, our goal would be 2 to 3 business days. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer depending on the circumstances. We'd get that decision back to everyone involved so that you can make your final decision on the lease
And
agreement.
you'll have a personalized link from them that you can put on all your listings. Like when I put my listing out there, it'll say to do your application, I'll put my application link, and then it'll say to verify pets, all pets and ESAs, please use this link. So that you can put it into your realtor remarks and it'll be there for whoever wants it. So you can be proactive and giving it to them so you don't have to fight it. Carolyn.
Carolyn?
Okay, I have a question. Has to do with if you're not dealing with a service or ESA, then you're dealing with let's say a townhomes area, which I have units there, and it's open to all pets. All right, so I get someone with pets. Do you handle liability for owners of the property? In other words, landlords.
So
How
the
does
only
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like on the listing, I put down a pet fee just because of in case there was damage or something like that. And I'm not sure that was the right way to proceed.
Okay. Yeah. And so definitely makes sense to have some sort of pet fee or deposit, as allowed by your local jurisdictions for pets because, they do cause damage, or they can cause damage, some more than others. The liability that we take on is only related to the HUD complaints that could arise based on ESAs and service animals. So we're not taking on any liability for pet damages or anything of that nature. We do assist with pets via our service. So in the database, you would have, all of the pets documented. We collect rabies records, making sure that those stay up to date. If you're interested in collecting city licensing documents, we also collect that. We get photos, basic information, all of that on file for you. So that then if there ever were an incident, which we always hope there isn't one, but if there ever were an incident where, let's say, a dog bites someone, it was totally unforeseen, no one knew this was going to happen, but a dog bites someone, you would know right away, okay, I have that rabies record. I know that, even though this is a headache, I know that dog is vaccinated against rabies. So at a minimum, the person or animal who was bit is not going to be, at risk for rabies because that is a really expensive and painful experience to go through. And so that's kind of where we help, but we're not taking on the liability for any damages that the animal causes.
I would say we've been requiring all of our owners lately to get pet liability insurance just for that reason.
And that's another thing that we can track too. So if you are requiring pet liability or dog bite liability insurance, we can make sure that that is documented on our pet policy and communicated as a requirement to the residents. At this time, it's our understanding that you can't require that of an ESA or service animal, but you can require it of just those regular household pets. Other things that we can get on file is proof of spay or neuter, microchip numbers. So kind of anything related to the animals that you want documented and collected, we can get that on file for you.
Where would they get pet liability insurance?
Yeah, great question. A lot of times renters insurance will allow that as part of their package.
If they don't, check with your normal insurance. If you have an insurance person that you like, ask them. I bet you they have it.
Mhm.
All righty. Well, Victoria, thank you so much for being here today. I know we're counting down here at the last minute. Thank you for being here. I think you've cleared up a lot of things for people. And they're very good about what they do and how they do it. Everybody, you get your own portal. They put all your properties in for you, so it's all uploaded. All you can do is go in there and check it all out. You give a customized link so that you can put it out there on your listing, or just send to tenants. I would say please consider them if you haven't already. Let them do the work for you.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you all so much for letting me join. If you have any questions, along the lines of anything we've talked about today, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm just an email away. So take care, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any last questions from anybody? Anything before we adjourn? No? Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Maria,
day.
I'll send you a copy of that slide deck if anyone
Wonderful.
wants a copy. So thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Bye-bye.